Jai. So welcome everyone. Today's class, we're going to be talking about Lord Caitanya taking sannyas and going to Jagannath Puri. So here, this class is going to be making the bridge between the two dhams that we'll be visiting on our trip. Navadvip Dham that we've been hearing about up until now, where Lord Caitanya was born and grew up, and Jagannath Puri Dham, where he spends the later part of his life. So the first 24 years of Lord Caitanya's life, he spends in Navadvip. And this is the Adi Lila of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. The whole Adi Lila takes place in Navadvip. So Adi means beginning. Those are his, and Lila means pastimes. So the beginning pastimes, the beginning of his life is in Navadvip. And there we heard all about his birth, his childhood, his youthful phase as Nimai Pandit, the logician. And then we heard how he went to Gaya and took Diksha, initiation from Ishvara Puri. And that caused a whole transformation in his external personality, at least, that he became ecstatic in love for Krishna, and he immersed himself in chanting the holy names and giving everyone the holy names. Then, last class we heard about how the caste Brahmins weren't very happy with all this, and they complained to the Chandkazi, who tried to stop the Harinam. But then Lord Caitanya went and he basically melted the heart of the Chandkazi through his sweet words. And the Kazi became a big fan of Lord Caitanya, even though he was a Muslim. And he promised that neither he nor any of his successors in his dynasty would ever impede the Sankirtan movement in Navadvip. So that brings us to today's class. So now, Nimai Pandit, Nimai is still in Navadvip. And now, even though the government or the powers that be are supportive, the caste Brahmins, who initially complained, and they're mainly demigod worshippers, even though they're like, so-called Hindus, but they really didn't like the influence of Lord Caitanya in Navadvip, because he was, as we heard, he was giving the holy names, the Hare Krishna mantra, to people who they thought were not qualified to be chanting the holy names of God, and he was watering everything down and contaminating everything by, having these unqualified people take part of, high exalted religious activities. Anyway, so they could no longer legally stop the Harinam, but still they were always just looking for faults. They were trying to find faults in Lord Caitanya, in his devotees, and they took every opportunity to criticize the Vaishnavas. So Lord Caitanya was really sad about this. One, because it wasn't good for the Brahmanas. They were just making offenses and becoming so degraded by all their materialistic and envious activities. And also it wasn't good for people in general, because the Brahmins are the natural leaders of society, and especially in matters of philosophy and religion. So if these caste Brahmins remain antagonistic towards Lord Caitanya, then others are also going to be critical. So then Lord Caitanya, he's feeling compassion, he's with Radharani's mood of compassion for all beings, and he wants everyone to just be happy in Krishna consciousness. So he's thinking deeply. He starts thinking deeply how to rescue these people. And his solution is that he needs to take sannyas. So his thinking is this: if I take sannyas, then people will have to pay obeisances to me, because that was the etiquette. It's still the etiquette that when you see a sannyasi, you should immediately hit the floor and pay obeisances. And if you don't, there's actually an injunction in the Shastras, so that if you fail to pay obeisances to a sannyasi, you have to fast for the whole next day to atone for it. Anyways, so nobody likes fasting. So everyone would pay obeisances to him. And then he said that by paying obeisances, just that very act of paying obeisances will relieve them from all the reactions to their offenses. So then, by his grace, devotional service will awaken in their pure hearts. And we're just talking about that in class, about how Bhava Bhakti, pure devotional service, is awakened within one by the mercy of the Lord or his devotee. by the heartfelt wishes, by the compassionate glances, like that. So when people pay obeisances, then the person, it invokes compassion. And so he's saying that by my grace, because then my grace, they'll be able to receive my grace, and devotional service will awaken in their hearts. So that's his hope. Then soon after having this thought, Keshava Bharati, who is a Mayavadi sannyasi, comes to Navadvip. Now, at that time, there were no Vaishnav sannyasis. There were hardly any Vaishnavas at all, even in the whole world. And the ones who were there were, Grihastas, like Advaita Acharya, Srivas Thakur. They were all married, or else they were not married, but they weren't sannyasis. So you have to take sannyas from someone who is a sannyasi. So, and even if there were Vaishnav sannyasis, that wasn't going to solve the problem, because the whole issue was that people didn't respect the Vaishnavas. So, but they did respect the Mayavadis, because the Mayavadis were known to be very scholarly, very austere, and very strict in their vows and things. People saw the Vaishnavas as being emotional and sentimental, just singing, dancing, eating, like not very strict. But the Mayavadis, they were very like very strict and severe and austere and scholarly. So Lord Caitanya thought that if I take initiation from a Mayavadi sannyasi, then the caste brahmanas and the Mayavadis, who were the two main groups that he wasn't able to influence from his current social position, would be able to basically warm up to Krishna consciousness. So as a preaching strategy, he decided to take sannyasa initiation from Keshava Bharati. And he made this announcement to a few of his associates, like Lord Nityananda and others, that I'm going to take sannyas. And of course, bad news travels fast. So soon everyone in Navadvip became overwhelmed with grief at the thought of Nimai leaving them, because sannyas meant that he would leave home and he wouldn't stick around in his hometown. He would leave Navadvip and he may never come back. So they were worried that he was just going to leave, just like his older brother did, like Vishvarup. He took sannyas and he just left, and no one saw him again. Like he didn't show his face again. So they thought, oh, Nimai is going to do the same thing. That'll be the end of our Nimai in our lives. And they were so attached to Nimai that they would literally rather give up their lives than give up Nimai's association. And especially his mother, Sachimata, she was so stunned with grief that she could barely even function. So the days were, going, the days were passing before Lord Caitanya, he had given them the date that he was going to leave. And that last night before he left Navadvip, all the devotees came to his house to see him. Everybody came. And it's described how Sridhar, Kolavecha Sridhar, he brought a gift of a squash from his garden. And someone else brought some milk. And Sachimata was just like tears. She was just like flowing with tears. And Lord Caitanya said, Mother, please take the squash and the milk and cook it and make a pumpkin kheer sweet for me. He just wanted to engage her in some practical service so that she would, be able to, be distracted from what was about to happen. So she went and she cooked and she made a beautiful offering for the Lord. And that was Nimai's last meal in Navadvip. He ate that and then he took rest for the night. Nobody could really sleep, but the next morning before sunrise, Nimai just left. He went alone on foot to a place called Katva, where Keshava Bharati was staying. And he told, there are a few devotees that he told to come soon afterwards, because he wanted there to be like kirtan, and he wanted the whole thing to be like a preaching program, because now he's in this mood of kirtan preaching. So he wanted his sannyasa initiation to also benefit others around who weren't devotees by having some kirtan going on. So those five were Nityananda, Gadadhar, Mukunda, and Chandrasekhar and Brahmananda. Apart from that, everybody was just plunged into grief when they woke up or they went there and they found out that Nimai was gone. So Nimai made his way to Katpa, and he went to the place of Keshava Bharati. So I'm going to read a little bit here from Chaitanya Bhagavat. This is Madhya Lila, chapter 28, that describes Lord Chaitanya's taking sannyas. Says, Lord Caitanya offered his Dandavat obeisances to Keshava Bharati, and then folding his hands, offered prayers. He said, "O saintly one, please be merciful to me. You are very merciful. You purify the fallen. Lord Krishna is the master of your life, and you have the power to give him to others. Lord Krishna always stays with you. Please give me service to Lord Krishna. Don't give me anything but that. Please teach me." As the Lord spoke, his body floated in tears of love. At the end of his speaking, he loudly roared and he danced. So by now, those other 5 devotees had come. So now it says, as Mukunda and the other devotees sang, Lord Caitanya, wild with ecstatic love for a person that was actually himself, in other words, Krishna, danced. Hearing all this, many millions and millions of people quickly came. I do not know how so many people could be present in that one place. They gazed at Lord Chaitanya's supremely handsome form. With their eyes, they drank the sight of him without stop. The wonderful stream of tears that flowed from the Lord's eyes cannot be described by words. Even Lord Anantashesh, with his many mouths, has no power to describe it. Dancing in a circle, Lord Caitanya bathed everyone with the streams of his tears. It says tears of ecstatic love. His ecstatic tears, they were. Sometimes in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's described how the tears were just kind of like, they wouldn't go down the cheeks like this, like usual, but they would be like syringes and be like squirt guns shooting out from his eyes. And so he's dancing in a circle and his tears are shooting out and everybody's getting wet. As it says, everyone was wet with the Lord's tears of love. Men and women, young and old, sang Hari, Hari. So the kirtan is going on like that, ecstatic kirtan. Seeing the Lord's ecstatic devotion, Keshava Bharati. So Keshava Bharati was a Mayavadi. Well, let's see what happens to Keshava Bharati. Seeing the Lord's ecstatic devotion, Keshava Bharati, now plunged in an ocean of bliss, prayed, only the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself and no one else has the power to manifest the ecstatic devotion I saw you manifest with my own eyes. I know without a doubt that you, and he's talking to Lord Caitanya, that you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the spiritual master of all the worlds. No one can ever truly become your spiritual master. Still, in order to teach the world, in your heart, you have decided to accept me as your spiritual master. So you can see that Keshava Bharati is having a change of heart by the association of Lord Caitanya, not just association, but seeing Lord Chaitanya's ecstatic love and, getting spritzed with the tears of ecstatic love from Lord Chaitanya's transcendental eyes, and hearing the kirtan, the holy name, being chanted by Lord Chaitanya's pure devotee associates like Lord Nityananda, Gadadhar, and others. Then it's like, whoa, his mind is getting blown, his heart is getting blown, and he's becoming a devotee. So then Lord Caitanya says in response to Keshava Bharati, he says, please don't try to trick me. Please give me initiation so that I may become a servant of Lord Krishna. So he's thinking that, oh no, Keshava Bharati's becoming humble. He's seeing me as the Lord, and now he's not going to want to initiate me. So he's like, no, stop with this. Like, you're going to give me initiation. Okay, so continuing with the reading. Everyone very joyfully chanted the holy names of Lord Hari. Only Hari, Hari, and no other sound was heard from anyone's mouth. Then Lord Caitanya, the life breath of all the world, sat down in front of the barber to have his head shaved. At that moment, a great sound of weeping arose, because Lord Caitanya was so beautiful. He had this long hair, like Krishna's hair, this long, wavy, black, beautiful, shiny hair. And it wasn't just the hair that they were worried about, but it was the significance of it, that he was taking sannyas. In those days, like sannyasis now, they have a pretty comfortable life. But in those days, sannyasis, to take sannyas meant to literally like give up everything. Like you had nothing. You had maybe one change of clothes. You would have the clothes you were wearing, very simple, just like a kopin and a small cloth and a chadar. That's it. And no shoes and no nothing. and then one change of that you would carry with you in like a cloth bag, and a water pot and a stick. And that's all you had. That was everything that you had in the world, nothing more. And you had no fixed residence. You didn't know where you were going to eat your next meal. You didn't know where you were going to sleep that night. And you didn't care because you totally had faith in Krishna that he was going to take care of you. So, but everyone was just like, no, we want Nimai to have a nice life. We want him to be happy, because we want him to be happy and comfortable and have nice things. And anyways, so the barber was there. Everyone was crying. The barber picked up his razor and put it there, but he couldn't do a thing. He couldn't shave it. He couldn't cut a hair on Nimai's head. It was just too much of a scene, like he was like, going to be the scapegoat for everything that happened. So the barber, it actually took days for the barber to get around to actually like gathering up the courage to shave Lord Chaitanya's head. Because devotees also all around, even Lord Nityananda was like falling down on the ground crying. So yeah, somehow or other, after all these days, the act of shaving was completed with great love. Then Lord Caitanya, the master of all the worlds, bathed in the Ganga, returned and sat down, dressed in sannyas clothes. Lord Caitanya said to Keshava Bharati. So now this is interesting. Now you're going to see what happens, who is actually initiating who here. Lord Caitanya said to Keshava Bharati, Maharaj, I had a dream, and an exalted person came in my dream and whispered the sannyas mantra in my ear. I would like to say this mantra to you so that you can confirm whether it's the right mantra or not. And then Keshava Bharati is like, okay, tell me what is it that you heard there in your dream? So then Lord Caitanya whispered the sannyas mantra in Keshava Bharati's ear. By this trick, Lord Caitanya mercifully accepted Keshava Bharati as his disciple. So at that moment, great wonder took birth in Keshava Bharati's heart. Keshava Bharati said, this is the best of great mantras. You have certainly attained Lord Krishna's mercy. So before Lord Caitanya took sannyas from Keshava Bharati, Keshava Bharati took initiation from Lord Caitanya. So he was no longer a Mayavadi sannyasi. He had turned into a Vaishnava sannyasi and a servant of Lord Caitanya, a disciple of Lord Caitanya. In a subtle way, in an informal way, in a like transcendental heart-to-heart way. Then by Lord Chaitanya's order, the noble-hearted Keshava Bharati repeated that same mantra to the Lord. Then the four directions became filled with auspicious sounds of Lord Hari's holy names. In this way, Lord Caitanya, the crest jewel of Vaikuntha, accepted sannyas. So now there's this verse from the Mahabharata, which foretells this event. It says, sannyasa krich chama shanto nishta shanti parayana. The Lord will take the fourth order of life, sannyas, and will be very self-controlled. He will be distinguished from the Mayavadi sannyasis in that he will be fixed in devotional service and will spread the Sankirtan movement. That's from Mahabharata, Dana Dharma Parva, chapter 149, Vishnu Sahasra Nama Stotra. So then the Keshava Bharati was thinking, what name to give the Lord? He said, the Vaishnavas in the 14 worlds do not see what my eyes see. In other words, he's seeing that Lord Caitanya is not like a disciple like other disciples. He's actually the Lord. Nowhere is there a name that satisfies me. Because they would usually add a sannyas name onto the end of the person's name that he has already. So because Keshava Bharati, his sannyas name was Bharati, so typically he would give a sannyas disciple the name Bharati. He would just add that to their name. But he says the name Bharati would indicate a disciple of Keshava Bharati. Therefore, that name is not appropriate for Lord Caitanya. As the fortunate sannyasi Keshava Bharati was thinking in this way, the goddess Sarasvati, who's the mother of learning, entered his tongue. In this way, he decided on the right name. Placing his hand on the Lord's chest, pure-hearted Keshava Bharati said, you make the whole world chant the name of Krishna. In this way, you make the whole world alive. And the word for alive is Caitanya. Chaitanya means the living force. So he says, by making people chant the name Krishna, you make the whole world alive with kirtan. Therefore, your name will be Sri Krishna Chaitanya. Because of you, everyone in the world will become fortunate. So when he said this, everybody started showering flowers and saying Jai, Jai, and doing really loud kirtan, so that it was going all over the four directions, and the devotees were floating in bliss. Everyone offered obeisances to Keshava Bharati, and the Lord was really happy with his new name. So in this way, the name of Sri Krishna Chaitanya was manifested. So now, after taking sannyas, the Lord ordered Mukunda. Mukunda Datta was a disciple of, was a associate of Lord Caitanya who was really good at singing. So he told Mukunda, lead kirtan. And then the Lord started dancing. So just listen to what happened this kirtan after the sannyas initiation. In the four directions, the Lord's servants sang. The Lord sighed, laughed, perspired, trembled, and cried out. The hairs on his body stood erect. I do not know all the limitless symptoms of ecstasy he manifested. He roared like millions of lions. Seeing him fall to the ground in ecstasy, everyone became afraid. Throwing somewhere his danda and kamandalu, the king of Vaikuntha became mad with love for a person who was actually himself. So he was just dancing. He just took sannyas. He had his danda. He threw his danda. He had his kamandalu, his water pot, threw that another way. And he was just throwing everything and dancing, dancing. And then he grabs hold of Keshava Bharati. He like embraces his sannyas guru, and by that embrace, Keshava Bharati attained ecstatic love for Krishna. And then Keshava Bharati, he also threw his danda and threw his water pot far away, and he just started chanting Hare Krishna in kirtan and dancing. So Keshava Bharati got so ecstatic in the kirtan that he lost his external consciousness, and he just started rolling on the ground and chanting, and he rolled and rolled so much that his like sannyas clothes and his kopin and everything became loose and just fell off. And so now he's there was nothing covering his body. He was just sannyas guru Keshava Bharati was like naked there in the kirtan, rolling on the ground, and everybody was just chanting. And Lord Caitanya was happily just dancing in ecstasy with his sannyas guru. And all the Lord's servants were happily singing. And it was a crazy scene. So that was Lord Caitanya's sannyas initiation. He was only 24 years old when he took sannyas. So that ends the Adi Lila. Then after that, Lord Caitanya stays in this world for another 24 years. And 6 of those he spends mainly traveling. And those 6 years are the Madhya Lila. And then the final 18 years, he stays only in Puri. He doesn't leave Jagannath Puri. And that is the Antya Lila, or the ending pastimes. So when Lord Caitanya first took sannyas, he wanted to go directly to Vrindavan. He was just so much like, Krishna, Krishna, I want to see Krishna, I want to serve Krishna, he was just so much in that mood. And he thought, well, the best place to serve Krishna is Vrindavan. Let me go to Vrindavan. So, but no one wanted him to go because Vrindavan was so far away. And also, when Lord Caitanya left Navadvip, Sachi Mata, his mother, was in such a rough state. She was in such an emotional state that the devotee said, don't worry, we're going to bring him back. Within 10, 12 days, we'll have him back here. They made a promise to her just to console her so she wouldn't die of grief. So then the devotees are very clever. Lord Caitanya's devotees, they were very tricky. And they took advantage of the fact that Lord Caitanya was so overwhelmed with ecstatic love that he was barely even aware of the external world, that they kind of misled him. They said, okay, yeah, let's go to Vrindavan, let's go to the Yamuna, it's just this way. And so they took him to the river. They walked and walked for some days probably. And they came to the river and they told him that it was the Yamuna, but it was actually the Ganga. So Ganga is in West Bengal, Navadvip. And then so when the Lord got to the river thinking it was the Yamuna, he became even more ecstatic. So he's like, yeah, Yamuna. And then he kept following Lord Nityananda. And Lord Nityananda led him all the way to the house of Advaita Acharya. So then at that point, Lord Caitanya was like, wait a minute, Advaita Acharya, Vrindavan? I don't think so. Then he knew that he'd been cheated, but he understood that the devotees did it, out of compassion. It was an act of compassion for Lord Chaitanya's mother and all the devotees in Navadvip. And actually, Sachi Mata, she hadn't eaten a thing in the whole 12 days that Lord Chaitanya had been away. So now that Lord Chaitanya was back, then Advaita Acharya called her to his house, and he said, Sachi, just cook. And Lord Chaitanya hadn't eaten either for 3 days since he took sannyas. He fasted on the day, and the whole time he was traveling, he was so ecstatic. He was just like not aware of his the world or his body or anything. And he didn't eat. So the two of them both needed a good meal. So Sachi Mata cooked. She made a big feast, and she fed Lord Chaitanya, and she also ate afterwards. So the whole time that Lord Chaitanya was there, he wasn't there long, but Sachi Mata would not let anyone else cook for him while he was in Navadvip, even though they wanted to. I'm going to read a little bit here from Chaitanya Charitamrita, describing this scene. So this is Madhya Lila, chapter 3. I'm starting from text 168. I won't read the Bengali just for saving time. Since Advaita Acharya was giving alms and food to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the other devotees, headed by Srivas Thakur, also desired to invite him for lunch. Hearing these proposals made by the other devotees of the Lord, Mother Sachi said to the devotees, "How many times shall I get the chance to see Nimai again? As far as you are concerned, you can meet Nimai many times somewhere else. But what is the possibility of my ever meeting him again? I shall have to remain at home, and a sannyasi never returns to his home." So she's thinking, you guys can go to Puri and see him. You can go wherever he is and see him. But I'm, a widowed woman, and, what opportunity do I have? In those days in the culture, the women were very much restricted. If their husband was going, they could go with the husband. But like a widow, now she didn't have a son because her son took sannyas. She couldn't travel with him. She didn't have a husband. She was basically stuck at home. So Mother Sachi appealed to all the devotees to give her this charity. As long as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu remained at the house of Advaita Acharya, only she would cook for him and give him his meals. Hearing this appeal from Mother Sachi, all the devotees offered obeisances and said, "We all agree to whatever Mother Sachi desires." They were all very loving with Mother Sachi. And now we're going to find out how it is that Lord Chaitanya ended up staying in Jagannath Puri. So I'm continuing here from the same text, 173. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw his mother's great eagerness, he became a little agitated. In other words, he became concerned. He therefore assembled all the devotees present and spoke to them. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu informed them all, "Without your order, I tried to go to Vrindavan. There was some obstacle, however, and I had to return." He was saying it nicely. "My dear friends, although I have suddenly accepted this renounced order of life, I still know that I shall never be indifferent to you." So he's consoling them. He's saying, look, I took sannyas, yeah, but it's not that I'm not going to forget about you. I'm never going to stop caring about you and loving you. And he continues, "My dear friends, as long as I remain manifest, I shall never give you up, nor shall I be able to give up my mother." So this was music to Mother Sachi's ears. But then he says, after accepting sannyas, it is not the duty of a sannyasi to remain at his birthplace encircled by relatives. So he's like, I love you all. I want to be with you for sure, just as much as you want to be with me. But as a sannyasi, I can't. It's not the sannyasi's dharma to do that. I have to travel. I have to leave my birthplace. So now he says, make some arrangement so that I may not leave you, and at the same time, people may not blame me for remaining with relatives after taking sannyas. After hearing Lord Chaitanya's statement, all the devotees headed by Advaita Acharya approached Mother Sachi. When they submitted Lord Chaitanya's statement, Mother Sachi, who is the mother of the universe, began to speak. Sachi Mata said, "It will be a great happiness for me if Nimai stays here, but at the same time, if someone blames him, like if someone criticizes him, it will be my great unhappiness." Mother Sachi said, "This consideration is good. So yeah, so now she's going to give her idea that here's my idea, here's my solution to this dilemma. In my opinion, if Nimai remains at Jagannath Puri, he may not leave any one of us, and at the same time can remain aloof as a sannyasi. Thus, both purposes are fulfilled. Since Jagannath Puri and Navadvip are intimately related, as if they were two rooms in the same house, people from Navadvip generally go to Jagannath Puri, and those in Jagannath Puri go to Navadvip. This going and coming will help carry news of Lord Caitanya. In this way, I shall be able to get news of him. All you devotees will be able to come and go, and sometimes he may also come take his bath here in the Ganges. I do not care for my personal happiness or unhappiness, but only for his happiness. Indeed, I accept his happiness as my happiness. After hearing Sachimata, all the devotees offered her prayers and assured her that her order, like a Vedic injunction, could not be violated. All the devotees informed Lord Caitanya of Sachimata's decision. Hearing it, the Lord became very pleased. So then it was decided. Sachimata was very intelligent, and she came up with the perfect solution that he'll stay in Jagannath Puri. At least that will be his base. And he'll be very near. We'll always get news from him. Devotees can easily go there, come back, tell her how he's doing. And also from there, he can easily come to Navadvip occasionally. So everyone was really happy. So that was the plan. And Lord Caitanya decided, okay, I'm going to Puri. And before he left, he gave this instruction to all the Navadvip devotees. This is text 190 from the same section. I'll read the Bengali because it's so nice. Gade yana kara sada Krishna sankirtana, Krishna nama, Krishna kata, Krishna aradhana. Lord Caitanya requested all the devotees to return home and begin chanting the holy name congregationally. He also requested them to worship Krishna, chant his holy name, and discuss his holy pastimes. So Krishna Sankirtan, Krishna Nama, Krishna Kata, and Krishna Aradhana. That was his parting instruction. And after that, he circumambulated his mother, and he told Advaitacharya to take care of all the Vaishnavas. Actually, Advaitacharya, they were all in tears again because, you know, another sad poignant departure scene. They're all crying. Advaitacharya also, like, he walked for some distance with Lord Caitanya, and he was just like, don't go, please stay a little longer. Actually, the Lord did stay a little longer, but finally he had to leave. And he was like, oh, please don't go. And he was crying. And Lord Caitanya was like, look, if you're going to cry, if you're going to be like devastated, who's going to take care of all the other devotees? Who's going to give strength to the other devotees so they can continue with their devotional service and they can continue doing kirtan and Krishna Katha and, you know, be functional as my devotees. So he said, you have to be strong. Now stop crying and be strong and take care of all the Vaishnavas in Navadvip. And then saying that, he just turned his back and he went. So Lord Caitanya on his way, he passed through some holy places like Ramuna, where the famous Kshirachora Gopinath deity is that stole the sweet rice from Madhavendra Puri. He also passed through Katak, which is our Nitai Prasad's hometown. And nearby there's the deity of Sakshi Gopal, which is a deity of Krishna that he famously walked from Vrindavan all the way to Katak to bear witness to a promise that one elderly Brahmin made to a young Brahmin, that he would give him his daughter in marriage. So then Lord Caitanya gradually arrived in Puri, and the first thing that he did was he went to a temple, to the temple of Lord Jagannath. And when he saw Lord Jagannath, he immediately fainted. So there was one highly respected gentleman there in the temple at the time who observed this. His name was Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And he happened to be an impersonalist. But he could see that Lord Caitanya was a great personality. So he helped him to get up, and he basically carried him because Lord Caitanya was unconscious. He picked him up and carried him to his house, where he and his brother-in-law was Gopinathacharya, was actually a devotee. He was a Vaishnava. So they took care of him there. And after a few days, because Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was an older person, he was a senior person, and he was a scholar, so he felt impelled to speak to this young sannyasi. He saw Lord Caitanya as this young sannyasi. He's like a kid, he's 24 years old. Let me teach him Vedanta philosophy. So Lord Caitanya agreed out of respect for an elder person, and he sat there and listened to him speak for 7 days straight. And then at the end of that 7 days, Sarvabhauma asked him, have you understood everything? Lord Caitanya said, because Lord Caitanya was just sitting there silently. He didn't ask any questions, he didn't make comments, he just was listening. Then Lord Caitanya replied, I understand Vedanta very clearly, but I cannot understand your explanations. And Sarvabhauma said, oh, well, what is your understanding then? And then Lord Caitanya explained to him the philosophy of, Vaishnava philosophy of Achintya Veda Veda Tattva, that, the Lord and the living entities are equal in quality, but different in quantity, that God is great and we're small, and we're actually not the Lord, but we are eternally servants of the Lord. We're individuals, and we have loving relationships with the Supreme Person, Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this, again, Lord Chaitanya's words and his philosophy and his clarity caused Sarvabhauma to have a change of heart, and he gave up his impersonal ideas, and he also became a Vaishnava. So much so that later he was reading the Bhagavatam, and he read that verse, famous verse, right, 10:14:8, that some of you know, Tatte Nukampam Susamik Shamano. At the end of that verse, it says, Mukti Pade Sadayabak. So Sarvabhauma came to Lord Caitanya and said, why does it say Mukti Pade? Let's change it. We should change it to Bhakti Pade, because Mukti Pade means attains liberation. And Sarvabhauma wanted it to say, we don't care about liberation. Let's change it to Bhakti Pade, which means attains pure devotion to the Lord. So, so Lord Caitanya, this time he didn't stay long in Puri that first time. He just stayed 1 month because he was still very fired up for his mission. He came to spread the Yuga Dharma, chanting the holy names of the Lord, and he wanted to go out and travel and preach and just go all over India to spread the holy names. So he took permission from the devotees there in Puri, and he went to the temple and got the blessings of Lord Jagannath, and he left just with one simple Brahmin assistant. And he traveled throughout South India for 2 years. And this was a time really when the Sankirtan movement spread like wildfire. I'm going to read a little excerpt here from Chaitanya Charitamrita, because this is so ecstatic how the Lord, when he was traveling through South India, was spreading the holy names. So this is CC Madhya chapter 7, text, starting from text 95. Almost like a mad lion, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went on his tour of South India, filled with ecstatic love and performing Sankirtan, chanting Krishna's name as follows. So this is what he was chanting. Krishna, 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 hey. Krishna, 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 hey. Krishna, 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 Rakshamam. Krishna, 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 Pahimam. Rama, Raghava, Rama, Raghava, Rama, Raghava, Rakshama. Krishna, Keshava, Krishna, Keshava, Krishna, Keshava, Pahimam. And so it says, the meaning of this is, O Lord Krishna, please protect me and maintain me. O Lord Ram, descendant of King Raghu, please protect me. O Krishna, O Keshava, killer of the Keshi demon, please maintain me. So chanting this verse, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, known as Gaurahari, went on his way. As soon as he saw someone, he would request that person to chant Hari, Hari. Whoever heard Lord Chaitanya chant Hari, Hari, also chanted the holy name of Lord Hari and Krishna. In this way, they all followed the Lord, very eager to see him. After some time, the Lord would embrace these people and bid them return home, having invested each of them with spiritual potency. Each of these empowered persons would then return to their own village, chanting the holy name of Krishna, and sometimes laughing, crying, and dancing. Such an empowered person would request everyone and anyone, whoever they saw, to chant the holy name of Krishna. In this way, all the villages would also become devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. People from different villages who came to see such an empowered individual would become like him simply by seeing him and receiving the mercy of his glance. When each of these newly empowered individuals returned to their own villages, they also converted all the villagers into devotees. And when others came from different villages to see them, they were also converted. In this way, as empowered men went from one village to another, all the people of South India became devotees. Thus, many hundreds of people became Vaishnavas when they passed the Lord on the way and were embraced by him. In whatever village Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stayed to accept alms, many people came to see him. By the mercy of the Supreme Lord, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all these persons became first-class devotees. Later, they became teachers or spiritual masters and liberated the entire world. So that was the power of Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan. Just imagine Krishna house spreading like that. So yeah, so on this trip through South India, Lord Chaitanya, he went to thousands of temples. He made millions of people devotees of Krishna. And it was during this time that he met Ramananda Roy. He had those famous talks with Ramananda Roy. He met the Brahman Kurma. He met Venkata Bhatta and his young son, who later would become Gopal Bhatta Goswami. He met Tukaram, who became his follower. There was a time when some Buddhists came and tried to feed him contaminated food, but they ended up getting clocked on the head by the plate by one crow. He met a Brahmin who had been chanting Ram all his life, and Lord Chaitanya got him to chant Krishna. And this was also when he met that illiterate Brahmin who was shedding tears while reading the Bhagavad Gita, even though he couldn't actually read it. So then on the way back, Lord Chaitanya spent 2 years just traveling, just walking every day from one place to another, visiting all these holy places. And then on the return trip, when he was almost to Jagannath Puri, he sent a message to Puri to tell everyone that he's coming close. And everyone came running in ecstasy. Nityananda was there. They were all waiting. Can you imagine? 2 years. They didn't see him. They didn't hear anything from him. So they just like dropped everything and went running to the place where he was, Lalanath. And then they walked back with him the rest of the way to Puri. So they arrived in a big Sankirtan procession with all the devotees, super ecstatic after, like meeting Lord Chaitanya after being separated from him for so long. And then by the time he gets there, because the announcement spread all over, so all the devotees from all over Navadvip and here and there and everywhere, they came, they just came to Puri, like it's described like rivers, like many tributaries flowing downhill into the ocean of love of God. All these devotees were just coming to Puri to see the Lord again after a long time. So that's how Lord Chaitanya took sannyas and went to Jagannath Puri, with a little bonus there about Lord Chaitanya's little, quite extended actually, trip around South India, all the way down to the tip, Cape Corm, the bottommost tip of India, and back up. It was a very long journey, hundreds and thousands of miles actually, that he walked on foot. So the next 3 classes are going to focus on Jagannath Puri now. Wednesday will be the story of how Jagannath came to be in Puri. And also we'll talk about why foreigners are not allowed in the Jagannath temple, and how like a little bit of support for us who most of us are Westerners and won't be allowed in the temple, and kind of like how to deal with that. And then Thursday will be Lord Chaitanya's relationship with Lord Jagannath, because Lord Chaitanya and Lord Jagannath have a special relationship. And then the last class will be on next Monday, and that will be Lord Chaitanya's transcendental ecstasies in Puri. So stay tuned. There's going to be some ecstatic classes. And thank you all. Are there any questions or comments on today's points, today's pastimes?
I had not heard those descriptions after Lord Caitanya took sannyas, and I thought that was amazing. The ecstatic dancing, and I really liked that.
Yeah,
and then also,
I think it's so funny how the guru, big Mayavadi sannyasi, very strict, but he just like lost himself in dancing. Didn't even realize his clothes had all fallen off. What a scene. That's all from the Chaitanya Bhagavat. Chaitanya Bhagavat has a lot of details. That's what Krishna's Kavara says. Like there's actually huge pastimes which Krishna's Kaviraj only gives one verse. Like, yeah, this happened, and then this happened. But if you go to Chaitanya Bhagavat, there's like chapters.
Mm.
So I've been referencing that. And I never read the Chaitanya Bhagavat actually. So it's only now that I've heard a lot of these stories, but as far as like literally like reading it myself, it's nice. What else? You're going to say something else, Brihat?
Yeah, I also had the same thought when I read Lord Chaitanya's travel through South India. He would meet someone, they would get prema, they would go back to their village, everyone there would get prema, and it just spread like a virus. And I thought the same way, that when will it happen that we can spread Krishna consciousness, at least in a small way like that?
We have to pray for Lord Chaitanya's empowerment, because the reason it worked was because he empowered them. You know, he embraced them, and then when he empowered them to have the same potency to spread the holy names as he himself had. So yeah, we have to really like pray for that empowerment by Lord Chaitanya, and also like put ourselves in a state of consciousness where we can receive it and actually realize it, you know, not have resistance to it. We have to be like a pure, transparent via medium of Lord Chaitanya's mercy.
Jai. Thank you, Prabhu.
All right. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. We see you all on Wednesday. Hare Krishna.
Jai, Hare Krishna.
Priyat Mridanga, Haribol.
Haribol, Benjamino.